The MGM Grand Hotel elevator in Las Vegas moves between floors in approximately 11 seconds. From the lobby to the 32nd floor, where Michael Bublé's suite was located on the night of October 3, 2015, the journey took just under 4 minutes, assuming no stops. There were 2 stops. Michael had just walked off stage after performing for 18,000 people at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. The arena had been sold out for 6 weeks. Every seat taken, every standing section packed with people who'd planned this night, bought the tickets, arranged babysitters and travel and hotels. The kind of crowd that creates its own weather system, humidity rising from 18,000 bodies generating shared heat, sound bouncing back from the ceiling in waves that you felt in your sternum before you processed them with your ears. He'd given everything he had. For 2 hours and 20 minutes, not because he'd felt like it, performing on demand, regardless of internal weather, was the fundamental discipline of being a professional, but because the people in those seats had given him their evening, and that deserved everything in return. He didn't know how to do it any other way. He never had. The walk from the stage to the elevator was managed by Craig Patterson, his tour manager, who ran interference through the backstage corridor, past the catering table where crew members were already breaking things down, past the monitor engineer coiling cables, through the fire door and into the hotel's service corridor that connected the arena to the main tower. Craig handed him a water bottle. "Great show." "Thanks," Michael said, meaning it and also not quite being present for it, the post-performance state that was. Like being inside a bell after it's been struck, still resonating, not quite yourself yet. He took the elevator up alone, cap pulled down, jacket collar up, head slightly bowed in the particular posture of someone hoping the universe will cooperate and not recognize them in the next 60 seconds. The doors opened at the 14th floor. A small boy got on. He was perhaps 9 years old, wearing pajamas, blue-striped, the kind that suggest a child who'd been put to bed and had come back out for reasons his parents were probably not aware of. He was carrying a cup of water from what Michael assumed was a vending machine, the plastic cup still sweating in the hotel's air conditioning. He stepped into the elevator, pressed a button, and stood with his back to Michael. No adult followed him. The doors closed. Michael waited. The boy stood quietly, drinking his water, not looking around, not looking at Michael, just standing there with the complete self-containment of a child who was either very secure in himself or very far away from himself. Something about the stillness was unusual. Most 9-year-olds in elevators fidget. They press extra buttons. They look at their reflection in the steel doors. They exist loudly the way children typically do. This boy was doing none of that. He was standing very still, water cup in both hands, looking at the elevator buttons without really seeing them. "Hey," Michael said. The boy turned around. His eyes were dark, and they were the eyes of someone older than 9, not in a troubling way, but in the way that certain experiences age the gaze. He looked at Michael for a moment. "Hi," he said. "No recognition." Michael relaxed slightly. "Okay," Michael asked. "It's pretty late for," he gestured at the pajamas. "I couldn't sleep," the boy said. "I got water." He held up the cup as if this explained and resolved the situation. "Fair enough," Michael said. They rode in silence for a moment. The elevator reached the 19th floor and stopped. Someone stopped, apparently, though no one was waiting in the hallway. The doors opened, paused, closed again. "What's your name?" Michael asked. "Lucas," the boy said. "I'm Michael." Lucas looked at him again with those old, quiet eyes. "I know who you are," he said. "My mom listens to your music." Michael smiled. "Yeah, does she like it?" Lucas considered this with a seriousness that seemed disproportionate to the question. "She says it makes her feel like things are going to be okay. She plays it when she's sad." Michael felt something shift in the air of the small elevator. "That's a good reason to listen to music," he said carefully. Lucas looked down at his water cup. "She's been sad a lot lately." The elevator moved upward. Michael watched Lucas and said nothing because nothing seemed like the right thing to say yet. "We came to Las Vegas for a trip," Lucas continued, unprompted, as children sometimes do when they find an adult who isn't trying to fix them. "My mom said we needed to go somewhere, just us." "That sounds nice. She saw you were doing a concert. She wanted to go. She likes your music." A pause. "I came too, but I didn't really understand what the concert was. I thought it would be louder." It was loud, but not that kind of loud. Michael thought about that. 18,000 people. Sound waves you feel before you hear. What kind of loud did you expect? Lucas thought about it. "I don't know. Different loud. Your loud is like." He struggled, like when it's quiet enough to hear someone crying, but it's actually very big. Michael stared at him, 9 years old, standing in an elevator in pajamas with a water cup. Lucas, he said slowly, that might be the best description of what I'm trying to do that anyone has ever given me. Lucas shrugged, unimpressed by his own accuracy. Why do you always do the same songs? Michael blinked at the pivot. What do you mean? At the concert, you did all the songs that everyone knows, but that means everyone already knew what was going to happen. Didn't you want to do something nobody'd heard before? It was the question of a child, innocent of the industry logic behind set lists and audience expectations and the commercial necessity of performing songs that people came specifically to hear. But it was also, Michael realized, a genuinely interesting question. When had he last done something no one expected? When had he last performed something that surprised even himself? Most people come to hear songs they already know, Michael explained. It makes them feel safe, Lucas said. Yes, safe. But didn't you want to feel something too? The elevator reached the 28th floor and stopped. Again, no one waiting. The doors opened to an empty corridor, paused and closed. Michael looked at Lucas, this strange, solemn 9-year-old in blue striped pajamas who asked questions like a philosopher and described music like a poet, and felt something he hadn't felt during the entire 2-hour 20-minute performance. Surprise. What would you want to hear? Michael asked. If I could play anything, something you'd never heard before. Lucas thought about it with the seriousness of someone being asked to make an important decision. Something that doesn't have a name yet, he finally said, because then it could be for anything. It could mean whatever I needed it to mean. Michael absorbed that. Then in the elevator of the MGM Grand Hotel at 11:47 p.m. with no audience, no stage, no lighting rig, no sound system, no set list, no prepared material of any kind, Michael Bublé began to sing. Not a song from his catalog, not a standard he'd learned at 17 in his grandfather's basement, not anything written by anyone for any purpose, past or present. He sang something that came from the moment itself, from the late hour and the small boy and the water cup, and the mother who played sad music and the father who was gone since April and the 6 months of silence from a child who had loved music and then stopped. A melody that arrived unrehearsed, completely improvised, accompanying itself in his imagination because there was no piano, no band, no instrument of any kind, just his voice in the enclosed space of a hotel elevator moving through floors, finding its way note by note without a map. The melody was simple in the way that only deeply felt things can be simple. It moved the way lullabies move, not trying to resolve anything, not building toward a climax or a resolution, just trying to accompany, to be present alongside rather than explaining or fixing. It didn't tell a story so much as create a feeling, the feeling of being in motion towards somewhere better. Even when you couldn't see it yet, of the ground being solid beneath you even when everything else felt uncertain, of someone being nearby, genuinely nearby, in the middle of a night that felt too large for one person to hold. He let the melody go where it wanted. Some phrases surprised him. Some notes arrived before he knew he was reaching for them. The imperfection was part of it, the slight roughness of something made in the moment rather than refined over time. He didn't smooth it. He didn't adjust toward correctness. He sang for perhaps 90 seconds. The melody found its way eventually to a place that felt complete without being finished, the way some conversations end not because everything has been said, but because everything important has been understood. And it stopped. Lucas stood very still, water cup held in both hands, looking at Michael with those dark old eyes. The elevator reached the 32nd floor. The doors opened. What's that song called? Lucas asked. It doesn't have a name, Michael said. I just made it up. Lucas nodded slowly. Okay, he said with a tone that suggested this was entirely reasonable. Then I think my mom would like it. Tell her I said hi, Michael said. He stepped out of the elevator. Sleep well, Lucas. You too, Lucas said. The doors closed. Michael stood in the 32nd floor corridor for a long moment before walking to his suite. Inside, he sat on the edge of the bed without turning on more than the bedside lamp, still in his stage clothes, thinking about 18,000 people and one small boy in pajamas. He'd given the 18,000 people exactly what they came for. He'd been professional and polished and energetically present and technically excellent. He performed the way performers are supposed to perform for audiences that large. He'd given Lucas 90 seconds of something that had never existed before and would never exist again. He'd made it up in the moment because a 9-year-old had asked for something without a name. He wasn't sure which of those performances had been harder. He wasn't sure which had taken more from him. He wasn't sure which one had given more back. He sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The next morning, Michael's tour manager, Craig Patterson, knocked on his suite door at 8 a.m. with coffee and the day's schedule. "Good show last night," Craig said, setting the coffee down. "Crowd was incredible." "Yeah," Michael said. He was looking out the window at the Las Vegas skyline in morning light, the neon signs dormant, the strip quiet in a way it never was at any other hour. "Something wrong?" "No, Michael paused. "Did something happen with a kid last night, after the show, something I should know about?" Craig frowned. "What do you mean?" "I met a kid in the elevator, about 9 years old, in pajamas, name was Lucas." Craig shook his head. "Nothing came through to me." "Why?" "No reason," Michael said. "I just want to know if he's okay." Craig had worked with Michael long enough to know that no reason sometimes meant a very specific and important reason that I'm not ready to explain yet. He made a note to check with the hotel's concierge about the Morrison family, whose reservation he recalled seeing on the hotel's guest list alongside the tour block booking. 3 hours. Later, Craig knocked again. "Lucas Morrison," he said. "Room 1404, with his mother, Sarah Morrison. Checked in 2 days ago." He paused. "I spoke to the concierge. Apparently the mother asked the front desk this morning if they knew anything about a man named Michael who was in the elevator with her son last night. She said Lucas came back to the room and sang to her." Michael looked up. "Sang to her? A song, not one she recognized." "Lucas said a man in the elevator taught it to him." Craig watched Michael's face. She described Lucas as, he checked his notes, the most animated she'd seen him in months. He sang the whole thing through and then fell asleep immediately. Michael was quiet. She also asked the front desk, Craig continued carefully, if they could pass along a message if they figured out who the man was. Message was, he checked his notes again, "Tell him that my son has been silent since April. Last night was the first time he's sung since his father died." The room was very quiet. Michael turned back to the window. Lucas's father, gone since April, 6 months of silence from a 9-year-old boy, and a nameless song in an elevator made up in 90 seconds for no audience had broken through something that months of grief had sealed shut. Craig stayed quiet, respecting the silence. After a long moment, Michael asked, "Is she still checked in? They leave this afternoon. Can you ask if they'd be willing to have breakfast with me? Just the two of them, no press, no cameras, nothing official." A pause. "I just want to meet her, and I want Lucas to know," he stopped. "Know what? That the song was real. That it wasn't something I just did to be nice. It came from somewhere. I want him to know that." Sarah Morrison and Lucas had breakfast with Michael in a private dining room at 9:30. Sarah was quiet and grateful in the way that people are when they've been carrying something very heavy, and someone has unexpectedly helped them set it down for a moment, not solved, not resolved, but briefly lighter. Lucas was wearing regular clothes now, jeans and a t-shirt, and he looked more like a 9-year-old. But the eyes were the same, old and dark and watching. "He told me the whole song," Sarah said. "Every note. He doesn't forget music. He never has." "It wasn't really a song," Michael said. "It was just something that happened in the elevator." "It was a song," Lucas said with quiet certainty. "Songs don't need to be written down to be real." Michael looked at him. 9 years old, 6 months of silence, pajamas and a water cup, and a question about why performers always sang the songs people already knew. "You're right," Michael said. "They don't." They talked for an hour. Sarah about her husband, about the past 6 months, about the trip to Las Vegas that had been partly an act of desperation, trying to give Lucas something new to look at so he didn't keep looking only at what was gone. Lucas about the concert, about the elevator, about the song that he'd sung to his mother at midnight in their hotel room, while she'd sat on the edge of the bed and cried in a way that felt, finally, like something releasing rather than something breaking. When they said goodbye in the lobby, Lucas shook Michael's hand with a seriousness that was almost formal. "Thank you for the song," Lucas said. "Thank you for asking for one," Michael said. He watched them walk toward the exit. Sarah's hand on Lucas's shoulder, Lucas looking up at her, saying something. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. They disappeared through the revolving doors. Craig appeared at Michael's elbow. "You okay?" "Yeah," Michael said. "Then, last night I performed for 18,000 people. I gave them everything I had. I know, it was a great show. And then I sang 90 seconds of something that didn't exist for one 9-year-old boy in an elevator." Michael watched the revolving doors, now still. "I don't know which one mattered more, but I know which one I'll remember." He picked up his coffee cup and walked back toward the elevator. The lobby was already filling with the noise and motion of another. Las Vegas morning, somewhere above, in a room on the 14th floor, a bed had been stripped by housekeeping, the sheets changed for the next guest, every trace of the Morrison family's two-night stay removed with professional efficiency. But Lucas had carried the song with him, through the revolving doors, into whatever came next, a song with no name, written for no audience. Performed once in 11 seconds of vertical movement for a 9-year-old boy in pajamas who hadn't spoken in 6 months and who asked, with the directness that only children and very wise people possess, for something that nobody had heard before. The elevator doors closed. Michael went up.